Hello guys and welcome back to a new video. I'm gonna teach you today how to play One Piece TCG for Dragon Ball Fusion World players. So I'm gonna make a lot of comparisons and analogies between the two games. It is really easy to pick up a new Bandai TCG because they share a lot. They have a lot in common. So it's gonna be super easy. So just follow alongside and you're gonna be a One Piece TCG master. That's me, I know DVS, not One Piece, perfect. So, first of all, how do you win? It is the same as Dragon Ball, kind of. So you need to reduce the life to 0, but then you need to swing one more. And that's for like a couple of reasons. Main one is the last life card is now logged out of the game. When you play Dragon Ball, and maybe your last life card is, I don't know, a key card of your deck, and then you can't even play that for the whole game, it really sucks. Maybe it's a super combo, maybe it's a one-off that you wanted to play, like even the last two cards because of the double strikes, right? In One Piece, it's not like that. In One Piece, you can like safely go to 0 life and still win the game. What about the leaders? Now I put Jiren and Ace because they share some similarities. They're both big leaders. 25k, 6k. How do you read leaders? Very similar. At the top right, you can see the power level of the leader. For example, Jiren is a 25k lead, Ace is a 6k lead. The leader's power varies a lot in One Piece. There are like 4k leaders, 5k leaders, 6k leaders, even 7k leaders. There's a lot of variety. But the main difference is they're already awakened. So when you play a One Piece game, you basically skip the whole pre-awakened phase and you get into the game with your leaders already awakened. For example, Ace is kind of the same as Jiren. When you receive damage or one of your character with 6k base power or more is KO'd, you draw 1. Same as Jiren, when you take damage, draw 1. And then there's also an additional effect that can convert one comboless card to a 2k combo. And that's the equivalent of a 10k combo in Dragon Ball. So two different effects. And a lot of leaders have so many different effects. Also, there's a bicolor balance. Because yes, in One Piece, we have dual color leaders. Yes. Like, we should have those in Dragon Ball as well, but for some reason we don't have them yet. But in One Piece, actually, there are dual color leaders. And the rules to create your deck are the same as DB. You can just put cards of the same color of your leader in your deck. And leader being dual color have some advantages, of course, as you have more freedom in your deck building, but they're usually weaker. They're more fragile. Usually, dual color leader has one less life than the normal monocolored leaders. So for example, the usual monocolored leader, like in DB, on One Piece has 5 life, and dual colors has 4 life. And if they have a bigger body, for example, this Ace is a 6k, usual leaders are 5k, they have even less life. So for example, this Ace has 3 life, one of the lowest amount ever. And yes, so they don't all start at the same number of life cards. That's really cool, because you can balance them both on the effects, on the power, and also on the life amount. So more powerful leaders have less life, and more weaker leaders with weaker effects or weaker stats have more life to balance that. Also bicolor and monocolor. So that's also pretty cool. You can find that in the bottom right corner of the card here. 3 life. Also, another difference is you usually don't draw on swing. So most of the time you draw less cards than DB, because on DB you draw once per turn and once on the leader swing. But like luckily in OP13 leaders draws a lot, so it's not even that much of a big deal. Like, it used to be a big deal when you drew not even half of your deck back in the days, but now you can easily even deck out on like T6, T7. So don't worry about that. What about the battle cards or characters? There are not many differences actually. The main one is there's a summoning sickness. So your battle cards on One Piece can't swing the turn they're played. It's the same as DB, so like top left is the cost of the card. You need to pay 1 energy or 5 energy. And then top right is the power, 0 or 6k. In the left side, there's the combo power. It is either 1k or 2k. And that's the equivalent of 5 and 10 in DB. And also there's the effect, of course. Another difference is that you can't combo your cards on board. So For example, your cantrips, once you play those, this ISO is a cantrip. Like, look at top 5, reveal 1, and add it to your hand. You can't combo this from your board. So you can like play an ISO and then use it as a 1k combo power. In Dragon Ball, you can do that. So, and then also, yeah, you have 5 maximum characters on board. So you cannot stack your characters like crazy. In Dragon Ball, you can stack like even 10, 20 characters if the opponent allows for it. But in One Piece, it is so different. You have 5 maximum bodies on board. And that might sound restricting, and it is, but it's actually to prevent board stacking. So the game feels more fast and not people just trying to stall each other and building a big board like some starve strategies are doing right now, you know? There's also an attribute. You might have seen this range and strike on the top right, and you can kind of ignore that. It is not usually important, but sometimes it matters for searchers or some particular effects. So maybe there are some searchers that only searches for, I don't know, strike characters, or there are effects that only targets ranged characters. So it's like an additional attribute that most of the time is ignored, but sometimes is actually important, but you can just ignore it at the moment. Then we have events. Events are basically the same in DB, main or battle. Like, you have the sorcery speed events that are the main event. This is the activate main, same as Fusion World, and you can use this in your main phase. You can pay the cost and then activate the effect, then it goes to grave. And you also have the battle events, the activate battle ones, and they can only be activated on defense in battle. There are no offensive tricks. It is called counter here, for example, and is also counter on the left side of your battle cards. So they're mainly defensive events. They might have like some extra effects. Talking about these combat tricks, of course. About the main ones, they can be really offensive. About the energy, this is like the biggest change from the two games, and the one that you might be confused about. In One Piece, there's a Dawn deck, and the Dawn deck is basically your energy deck. So you don't charge from your hand. Every turn, you just pick 2 cards from your Dawn deck and you put in your field. So every time you go +2 in your energy, not even +1, till you reach 10 Dawns. And the first player only add 1 Dawn. So the first player's curve is usually 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 10, and then it stops on 10. And the second turn player goes 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And that's it. On T5, it has the maximum amount of energy you can have. That's a big difference, because cards in your hand can be dead in this game. In DB, like dead cards, you can either discard those or charge them in your charge phase. But if you're talking about One Piece, you can find yourself with a lot of dead cards in your hand, and they're gonna stuck there for the rest of the game, because there is no charge. So it is easier to manage your hand, because you don't have to think about what to charge and what to play, or what to combo. The main difference is this energy is not only for paying your cards cost, but it can also be used to buff your power. So every time you assign one of these dawns, one of this energy, to one of your characters or leaders, you give it +1k for the turn. So for example, a card that can swing twice is gonna get the buff for both swings. That actually matters. For a card that needs to be at a certain, I don't know, power to activate any effect, you can buff that with your dawns. And there are also effects that says Dawn X activated. For example, our leader, see this Dawn X1, it means if it has 1 Dawn assigned, you can activate the effect. So this is really interesting. This is a limited resource. You cannot go above 10 energy. That's basically the equivalent of 5 energy on Fusion World. 5 energy is usually the late game, also on Fusion World. Like 5+, it is the late game. And 10+, it is the absolute late game here. So you only have these 10 resources, and you need to manage if using them on offense or if using this to cast your characters or spells or whatever. I think the most difficult part to grasp when switching from Fusion World to One Piece TCG, but it's gonna be fun. I can guarantee you. It is not that easy. Like, it might seem easy because you don't have to think about charge phase, but at the same time, it's the only way to buff your swings. Like, if you don't assign your dawn, you can swing bigger. So yeah, you need to think about it. Maybe like sometimes playing on curve is not the best play. You just have to assign some dawns, play maybe weaker cards or a card that costs less to accommodate for a certain amount of swings. So yeah, it is really interesting, I would say. There are also other relevant differences. And I'm mainly speaking about combo power. So as I said earlier, you cannot combo from your board, but also you cannot combo on attack. So if I'm swinging with any of my characters, I cannot dump my whole hand and all in. That's not doable in this game. There is no combat phase for the active player. You need to decide the size of your swing before swinging. So you can combo on attack and you can combo from board. That's a big difference. So keep that in mind. Also, there are no super combos. Counting how to swing and how to go for lethal, it is actually easier. Since there are not super combos, every time you go for the usual 30k swing that you would do on Dragon Ball, what your opponent can do is either drop a 10k and a 5k, like 2 cards, or a supers. In One Piece, if you're going for that same kind of swing, the opponent has to drop 2 cards no matter what, or take the hit, because there are no supers. And that's pretty impactful, because you don't even need to keep track of supers. There are some situations where you know for a fact that you're going for lethal no matter what the opponent's hand is, just based on the number of cards. Because you know maybe one of your swings is going to take like 2 cards from your opponent's hand, and then you go for a bigger swing, and that's going to guarantee 3 cards from your opponent's hands. So there's also an extra lethal that you can do in this kind of game. And the dawn are assigned before combat. Yeah, that is pretty relevant. You don't swing, and then you use your dawn to buff your card, but you need to buff your card before swinging. And that's also very important for blockers. Blockers in this game are insanely powerful. Because if you need to decide your attack size before the block declaration, then you can even block, I don't know, a 200k swing with a Kui. Because your opponent doesn't have to combo after your block. They need to decide the size before you're blocking. So for example, a shit card like Kui that will never ever be played in Dragon Ball. This is so bad. The OP equivalent in Marco, kind of same, because like 4 job is the equivalent of a 2 job actually. 6k means it can swing into a leader, same as 20k in Dragon Ball. Both are blockers, and on KO they draw, like this draws 2 cards, this draws 1 card. Well, they're kind of similar, and this card is insanely broken. This card is completely shit, just because of the game mechanics. And also because there is no chip removal. Almost no chip removal. If you want to remove a blocker, you need to pay usually more than they did to develop that same blocker. So it is not super efficient to remove blockers in this game like it is in Dragon Ball. So blockers are like pivotal in basically every deck. It is very strong. Oh yes, triggers. I don't like this mechanic at all. I'm gonna tell you how it works. So basically when you take life, you take a sneak peek at the card, you take a look, and if it has this trigger effect on the bottom, then instead of like adding it to your hand, you can activate the trigger effect. So the opponent swings, you don't block, you don't combo, you take the hit, and then you take a look at the cards that you would pick from your hand. It is 5 elders are at your service. You can just use the effect, the trigger effect that says activate this card's main effect. So instead of adding this card to your hand, you're just gonna activate the main, look at top 3, add a 1 to your hand. Same thing as Luffy is the man who will become the king of pirates. If the opponent swings, you are about to pick up this from your life. You can activate the trigger and buff your leader or your characters for 1k for the turn. I'm not a big fan of this mechanic. It's not a fun comeback mechanic. But the good thing about it is that there are no relevant triggers in One Piece set 13. All the top 3 decks have no relevant triggers. These are the only this is the only trigger in the Im deck. That's one of the best deck of the format. And this is one of the only trigger in the Zoro deck. That's also one of the best deck in the format. And Ace is the third best deck in the format, and it also has no relevant triggers. So, like, you can kind of ignore this, luckily, in this metagame, because the dedicated color is yellow, and that's why it's a cringe color. Because it's the dedicated trigger color. But that mechanic is very bad, so as long as yellow is not meta, I think the game is very, very enjoyable. I mean, that's my personal take. You can love it or hate it. There are a lot of people that enjoy that. I don't personally. And when there are not many triggers in the game, I'm very happy about it. And that's all. I don't think there's any other differences worth mentioning. If you want to give it a try, I think One Piece is really fun at the moment. I used not to like it that much. I played a little bit in OP5, I played a little bit in OP9. But now OP13, I'm really enjoying that. Because the metagame is very cool. The leaders actually draw now. Like both in Ace, this kind of leaders draw a ton of cards. You have a lot of different options. They're very fun to play. They feel like very Dragon Ball-like. Because you've seen Ace is very similar to Jiren, and Jiren was one of my favorite leader back in set 3. So that also adds. That also counts. Yeah, it is very similar to Dragon Ball. So if you're burnt out and you want to try something fresh, something else, give One Piece TCG a try and it's gonna worth it. I'm not gonna lie. I guarantee you it is worth it. So let me know what you think about this game in the comments below. Especially if you have any other question, if you gave it a try and you don't know about you're still confused about something, let me know in the comments. And remember to leave a like, subscribe, and follow me on twitch.tv/icelandkr. I'm gonna stream also some One Piece TCG on there alongside Dragon Ball, and I'm gonna see you next time.